Welcome on in, members of the chapter and litany enjoyers. This is your chapter master, Sprues and Studs, and today we are going to be marching through the Indomitus box yet again. And we are going to be specifically taking a very close look at the Indomitus Chaplain in this review video. So there's nothing to do except dive right on in. Reveal and opening. All right, members of the chapter, let's dive into the review, and we are going to be starting off with the face as usual. So the face is actually very interesting in the fact that, well, he has a half cybernetic face, which is very interesting. You can see that the metal part is actually indented into the flesh part of the action figure. There is a metallic red glowing menacing eye staring right back at you. And speaking of the other eye, it is fairly nicely screened on. Clearly, you can see that the chaplain is barking litanies out with the screaming mouth. And there's actually quite a lot of detail in the mouth in that, well, you get to see the whites of the teeth, the red on the inside of the mouth. I will have to say that there is a lot of detail on the face. Get to see these wrinkles up top, these wrinkles around the mouth. So very excellent detail. I will point out to you that there is a little bit of light shading. So let's move on to the pauldron, and on the right hand side it clearly states Mortis, and you have a skull that's almost got like a sunburst halo around it, which is interesting. The Mortis part of the action figure is ingrained into the plastic, and you can see that there is plenty of shading that goes into the recesses of the lettering here. It has the characteristic chaplain gold and black. We're going to move around to the other side, and this is where things start to get a little bit interesting in my opinion. So you have the inverse of what you would see in an Ultramarine. You have the blue Ultramarines U instead of a white one, and then the rest of the pauldron is white instead of blue. So like I said, it is inverted, and it appears that the U is nicely screened on with no issues whatsoever. And on top of the pauldron, there are some spikes for a little bit of decoration and pizzazz. So as we are moving on to the middle part of this action figure, there is a winged skeleton here, and the wings do actually have some nice shading that is happening in between the feathers. There is a very detailed rib cage and obviously a skull that's sitting on top. One thing that I will point out to you here is that this tubing here is very interesting in that it almost mimics the skeletal rib cages of a skeleton. We saw that on the Judiciar, but it is way more pronounced on this Indomitus Chaplain. It's nice to see some gold rings that are surrounding the whole entire arm, and it breaks up the monotony of the black of this chaplain's armor. So let's take a look at the torso section of this chaplain, and he actually has quite a lot of stuff that is hanging below. So over here on kind of like his side armor with the skull and the halo up top, here there is a very detailed purity seal ribbon. And moving on, there is an amulet, and weirdly enough, for some odd reason, this kind of reminds me of an owl. There's plenty of highlighting and shading, so there is a lot of depth on this part. Across this chaplain's torso is kind of a plain looking belt compared to the rest of the action figures that we have seen. He's just got this simple metal buckle, and then dangling down you have like this cross type of rosary. There is plenty of detail here in the chain, and then down here there is also that same attention to detail that you saw in the owl-like pendant over here, in that there is lots of highlighting and shading. And looking at the tabard area for this action figure, it is a bone color up top, and then in the deeper recesses you get to see some tan shading. And then as we flip up the tabard, it is that same luxurious red that we see in all these Space Marine capes. Finally, moving on down to the bottom portion of the Space Marine, there is a Ultramarines U as well as a skull on the knees. I like it how there's this continuity of the iconography down here compared to this. You get to see this spike golden halo right here. And finishing off, there is this nice gold embroidery that is surrounding the whole entire chaplain that makes this thing really jump out when you're looking at it. And another thing I'll quickly point out to you is that there's like these interesting fins that are hanging out from this chaplain's armor. So looking at this chaplain as a whole, I had noticed that there is not as much highlighting compared to the Justiciar. I would have liked it if the same white glow was present on this chaplain. There's a little bit of it down here, but it is not as pronounced, so it makes this action figure look a little bit flat. And now we are going to be taking a look at this Crozius right here. This Crozius is probably one of the more ornate ones that we have seen, and you clearly get to see a owl right here, or is it a eagle? So let's just say it's an owl. There is lots of shading that's in between the feathers of the owl, and there's plenty of detail and a lot of texture that's happening. So the owl is obviously rocking two wings. There's a skull up on top with this spiked halo, and this owl is actually perched on top of a regular Crozius. So the normal Primaris Chaplain has this part only, and clearly this owl part is perched on top of the normal part. If we flip around to the other side, it is the same case over here. Now we are going to be picking up this Absolver bolt pistol, and I don't think actually that a chaplain can wield an Absolver bolt pistol, but this is what we get. Kind of makes me wonder why the Justiciar we weren't able to get a Absolver bolt pistol, but here we are. The chaplain has one. So clearly you get to see 4 different tones of color. You got the black, the gold for the skulled wing, the red for the casing, as well as the gunmetal silver for the rest of it. So there's a nice color balance here. And then there is a purity seal that is hanging down. We flip around to the other side. It is pretty much the same, minus the purity seal. So that is the pistol. So let's take a look at this gigantic tome that this Space Marine is rocking in the back. So the tome is clearly of a red color. There is shading here in the indentations of this plastic. And the tome is bound by these leather straps, which are textured and very noticeable on this action figure. And there's also a purity seal wax that is kind of binding this book together. And as we flip around and take a look at the rest of the book, between the pages, there is shading. We're going to set it down and take a look at the chaplain's backpack. So the chaplain's backpack is way more adorned than your regular chaplain. We've seen this kind of iconography before, especially in the Black Templars. There are plenty of purity seals that are dangling down on both sides here. These purity seals have a ton of shading, but there is no writing whatsoever. There are spikes that are happening on top of the vent portion of the Space Marine's backpack. We've seen this before also on the Justiciar. As we are looking at the back of the backpack, there is a plethora of purity seals that are happening with it, and there's a nice symmetry as well. And so that is the in-depth look at this action figure. Let me wrap this review up. All right, members of the chapter, please let me know what you think about this action figure in the comments below, because I really do want to hear what you think about this guy. And right now, I will let you know what I think about this action figure. So there are a few things that I really like on this action figure. The first thing is got to be his face. The face is extremely unique in that he's got that metal skull implant that is very, very prominent, that you notice when you're looking at him. And the face sculpt is also very unique in that the guy is screaming. And the second thing I do like about him is the unique looking Crozius. So he's got that regular Primaris Chaplin's Crozius, except on top of it, there is that skulled owl, which adds a little bit of extra dimension and oomph on top of this action figure. I really do think that this guy's iconography is very cool. And I'll be honest with you, he kind of looks like more of a regular firstborn chaplain rather than the Primaris Chaplain. So if you like that old school kind of vibe and look, this is the action figure that I would recommend you to buy, which kind of alludes to the question of, should you buy this action figure? And like I said before, if you like this aesthetic and the firstborn kind of look, then this Chaplain is definitely going to be a must-buy for you. So in closing, this is Sprues and Studs. Thanks once again for tuning into these action figure review videos. I do appreciate your support. If you are interested in buying this action figure, please click in the link in the description below, where you will be sent to a very, very reputable dealer of these fine plastic figures, which they're called Flyma. And do not forget to use the code SNS to receive 12% off of your action figure purchases at Flyma. And with that being said, I will see you all in the next one.